This story begins in 2002, in my uncle's basement in Toronto. I'm 18, surrounded by my big Armenian extended family. My parents and brothers are there, uncles, aunts, cousins. We're gathered around the TV with my grandparents at the center of the group. They're sitting on a little love seat directly across from the screen. We're watching a video of a home they haven't seen in over 60 years. Musadakis. A friend of a family friend was recently there. The video he's taken has been traveling from living room to living room. It feels like a treasure, like contraband. My grandparents, along with almost everyone they knew, left Musadakis, their indigenous home in what is now southeastern Turkey, in 1939. And it's like the place stopped existing, or existed only in legend. Now, here is this video proving that it's still a place existing in real time, and there are still Armenians there. I'm watching the video, but also I'm watching my grandparents. Nene, my grandmother, is so excited. She's pointing things out like a tree she remembers and the street her friend used to live on. Here in Canada, she's used to being led around by her kids and grandkids. Now she's showing us around. I've never seen her so confident. My grandfather, Babug, is mostly silent, as usual. He's a tiny, quiet man. I hardly ever hear him speak. He's just staring at the screen, kind of blankly. In the video, there's a huge party going on. They're cooking herise, a traditional ceremonial meal, over an open fire in these giant pots. Crowds of people are dancing the Musadakis debki to the droning sound of the zurna and the booming rhythm of the davul. Among the crowd of dancers, there's this tiny little old woman. She appears on screen for just a second or two, and then again. She's hunched over, dressed in all black, with a headscarf. She has the sweetest smile, and she's dancing with so much flair. Babug is still not saying a word. But then suddenly, his hands start to tremble, and tears stream down his face. He points to the screen. His finger is so unsteady. And he says, "My sister. That's my sister." He hasn't seen her in over 60 years. Welcome to Country of Dust, Stories of a Changing Armenia. I'm Nyree Abrahamian. This episode, Daughter of the Crying Man, is dedicated to my Heilig, Jean Abrahamian. When we saw that video, my grandfather was sure it was his sister, but we had no way of contacting her. All we had was this image of her dancing. My babug died a few months later, and he never got to reconnect with his sister. But my dad took up that mantle for him. My dad was born in Syria and raised in Lebanon. He fought in the Lebanese Civil War, then emigrated to Canada. He'd never set foot in Musadakis, but he was the quintessential Musadakisi. Musadakis speak a wild dialect of Western Armenian. Most other Armenians can barely make out a word. Like, to say, "How's it going?" instead of "Inch gachiga," we say "Chek kuchiku." We're known for being tough, crazy mountain people. My dad embodied this. He was also a family man. And I don't just mean our immediate family. When I was growing up, every year we'd have this huge Musadakis family reunion at our cottage near Toronto. My dad and all the uncles would stay up all night drinking and dancing. They would spit roast a lamb and cook herise, stirring it with these giant wooden oars that my dad had hand-carved. But he wasn't all machismo. My dad had a tenderness to him that would just come gushing out. As a kid, I'd watch him tear up every night watching reruns of MASH. That night in my uncle's basement, seeing that video and watching his father cry opened up something new in him. With all his Musadakis pride, I don't think the idea of going there had ever crossed my dad's mind. For many Armenians of his generation, the thought of going to Turkey, even to the village your family was from, was too painful to think about. I think finding out that he had living family there made it more real for him. So my dad set out on a mission to find his long-lost relatives. I mentioned that my grandparents left Musadagh in 1939. You might be surprised that they were there in the first place. Armenians in Turkey, living in their hometown decades after the genocide. But Musadakis are fighters. In 1915, they took up arms, took to the mountains, and resisted the Ottoman military for 53 days. Just as their supplies were running out, they were spotted by a French warship and taken to a refugee camp in Egypt. This part of the story is pretty well known, but what fewer people are aware of is what came next. After World War I, the Musadakis returned home. But this homecoming was bittersweet. Almost every other Armenian community in the former Ottoman Empire had been wiped out. When they returned, their region had been under French control. But then, in 1939, the French ceded it to Turkey, leaving the Armenians vulnerable. This is when most of the Musadakis left, in an exodus that was part of the long shadow of the Armenian genocide. This was the split in my family. My grandparents went to Syria, then Lebanon, eventually in their old age to Canada. My grandfather's sister, Zaruhi, stayed behind with her husband. Over the years, they lost touch. The last he heard, they had emigrated to Soviet Armenia. Soon after we watched that video, one of my uncles, who had been planning to visit family in Lebanon, decided to add Musadagh to his trip. Before he left Toronto, my dad handed him his camcorder and said, "Go find our family." My uncle arrived, and sure enough, after walking around the village square and talking to some of the elders in the church courtyard, he found them. That's Zaruhi, my grandfather's sister, the woman dancing in the video. She's sitting on a daybed, dangling her feet over the edge, and singing a song she made up about Garod, about missing all her family members. This is something my dad would do all the time, too, make up songs about his life. I grew up with his improvised tunes filling the air in our apartment and on long car rides. Zaruhi had 9 kids and many grandkids. Some of them were still living there in the village. Several family members have gathered. They're sitting in a cozy living room. My uncle says, "I'm going to take this video to Jean and to our family in Canada." That's Zaruhi's daughter, looking at the camera. She says, "Hello to everyone. I want them to come so we can meet. That year, 2004, my parents had been planning a big trip to Armenia for their 25th anniversary. But the moment my dad saw this video, he knew he needed to go to Musadakis. He now had our family's phone number there, so he called them. It was afternoon in Toronto, but in Musadakis it was close to midnight. He was so excited, he didn't bother checking the time difference. My cousin Jem, Zaruhi's grandson, answered the phone. He was telling me about this phone call recently. Almost 2 decades had passed, but it was still so fresh in his head.
Մարդ մը գխոսի մեզի հետ, հայերեն գխոսի եւ մեր փարփարը գխոսի, ինքը գբացադրե երցեր ընտանիքն եմ ըսավ.
Jem answers the phone half asleep, and there's this man talking in the local dialect. He says, "I'm your family." He's talking and crying. My dad says, "I'm coming. We're going to eat fasulya together." He calls my mom over. Hasmig, change our tickets. Eventually, they get down to logistics. And Jem says, "How are we going to recognize each other at the airport?" To which my dad responds,
Aryuna
gakashe. The blood will pull us. And he was right. The blood did pull them. When Jem saw my dad at the airport, he said, "That has to be Jean." I'm going to get emotional, Jem says. I'll never forget the first time your dad hugged me. He kissed me here. Jem points to his neck. Jem breathes in. And he smelled me. This was a thing my dad would do. When he hugged you, he would smell your neck, just fully breathe you in.
Առաջին կրկվելին գարձես թե ամբողջ կյանքնից միասին անցած ընտանիք մնենք.
Jem says that from that first hug, they were family. This trip was momentous for my dad. He and my mom spent a couple of weeks in Musadakis, and there are hours and hours of video. He carried his camcorder around the whole time. Here, he's on his cousin's roof, taking a video of Musalir, the mountain where our ancestors resisted genocide. He says, "I can never get my fill of this mountain." Watching these videos reminds me of a side of my dad that had kind of faded away in my mind. He could get so into something with his whole heart. He was like a little kid, just so excited to be there. I've watched hours and hours of these videos, but there's one moment I especially love. They're having a big party in the church courtyard. The whole village is invited. There's a microphone going around, and people are singing old revolutionary songs. My dad grabs the mic and starts singing O Daruchun, this iconic song that's about longing for your homeland. The chorus goes, "Hampere hokis, hampere." Be patient, my love. Be patient. We will make our way home. Then he walks over to his aunt Zaruhi, crouches down and they sing together. Then he starts ad-libbing, making up his own lyrics, so that they're still in the spirit of the song, but specific to him and his aunt and Musadakis and this homecoming. This is such a full circle moment for him. All his life, he longed for something that felt like home. Now he's here, singing. What I've been calling Musadakis is actually a group of 6 villages in the vicinity of the mountain where the Armenians staged their resistance. It's also known as Musaler in Armenian, literally the mountain of Moses. It's right on the Mediterranean coast, near the border with Syria. When there was a mass exodus in 1939, across the 6 villages, a small portion of families stayed behind, and they congregated in one village, Vakuf, which now holds the eerie title of Turkey's last Armenian village. The other 5 villages, including my grandfather's village, Yornoluch, became populated by Turks. So my extended family who still live in the region all live in and around Vakuf, the Armenian village. My dad was thrilled to be there, to be able to speak his native dialect, spend time with the elders in the Armenian church. But what he really wanted to do was find his ancestral home, where his father had grown up, in Yornoluch. Here's what we knew about the house. It was a 2-story stone house that my great-grandfather had built. When our family left in 1939, he handed the keys to a Turkish man who worked in his orchard. This is one thing that's unique about my family's story. In most cases, when the Armenians left, the government took their deeds and gave them to Turks from a different part of the country. But in our case, the house got passed to a family that my family had known. We knew this story, but no one in my family had ever been back to the house or even knew if the same family still lived there. Even my relatives who still lived in the area, like Jem, hadn't considered visiting the house. But Jem was pretty sure he'd be able to find it. He's the local veterinarian, so he knows most of the families in the area because he takes care of their livestock. So he and a couple of older Musadakis men took my parents to Yornoluch. Yornoluch is about a 15-minute drive from Vakuf, the village that has remained Armenian. They drove there, got to the neighborhood where they knew the house would be, asked around a bit, and within minutes, they were there. They say hello. There are 2 women standing outside. One older, one younger, with a baby on her hip. My dad sees the house, sees these 2 women, and then he says, "This is my babuk's house?" And he breaks down. You can hear him sobbing. Someone tells him not to cry. He drops the camera. The next part of this story has become etched into my family's lore, from Musadakis to Toronto. My cousin Jem was telling me about this moment.
Վերջը երեսը դեսավ բաբայիդ գուլա աթորը ցկեց կավատ մճուր պան պերավ եւ ճուրը պերավ.
He says that my dad was crying and crying. Then, the older woman, whose name is Hamala, brought him water and a chair. Hamala is the oldest member of the family who is still alive, the family that my great-grandfather gave the house to. Jem says that she kept repeating "Hoş geldiniz," Turkish for welcome.
Hoş geldiniz, hoş geldiniz. Savçuru.
Welcome, welcome. Then my dad, still in tears, said something to her in a mashup of Turkish and the Musadak dialect.
Konuş hoş geldiniz, siz hoş geldiniz.
It roughly translates to "fuck you're welcome. This is my dad's house. You're the one who's welcome." I asked Jem if Hamala understood him. Thankfully, she didn't. Fuck you're welcome. This phrase has become iconic in our family. To this day, Jem and his brothers use it as a joke to greet each other. Like, welcome. Fuck you're welcome. Someone might interpret it as rude or crass, but I know my dad didn't mean it that way. He was actually comforted knowing that the family living in our family's home was not in denial of its history. And especially that from a few generations back, they actually knew our family. That meant something to him. But there's this huge dissonance. Here's this kind woman saying, "Here, have some water, have a chair, welcome." And it's like, how is this glass of water supposed to address a lifetime, several lifetimes of being displaced, of not being able to live where you're from? And not just our family, our nation. What is this water going to do? What is your welcome going to do? At one point, Hamala said to my dad, "This is your home," or it might have been, "This is your home too." But what does that mean exactly? She didn't literally mean it, like you can come move in, and that's certainly not how my dad took it. I think it was an attempt at reconciliation, but it's bittersweet. On the one hand, what so many Armenians seek is acknowledgement. And in this very specific case, on a person-to-person level, we have it. But what does it change? As they were leaving the house, my father, still in tears, said, you can barely hear it, but Jem was there with my dad, and he remembers what he said.
Halal toğunu irins. Irins halal toğunu.
Meaning, let it be blessed for them, or let them live in peace. It's like for my dad, there was a curse hanging over the house. And by saying that, he lifted it. My dad grew up with hard-line views about seeking justice for what the Turks did to us. And in that viewpoint, there isn't room for someone like Hamala. Giving his blessing doesn't contradict his need for justice, but it does complicate it. He's there, in his grandfather's house, holding his pain and his anger, but he doesn't turn away from it. He faces the house and the people who live there with compassion. This meant a lot to Jem. He says, your dad grew in my eyes when he said that. Jem says, we should have done this, had this conversation, when he was still alive. Ayo. Okay. I had this conversation with Jem in June 2023. My dad had passed away just a month before, after a 3-year struggle with ALS. I went to Musadakis with my family, my mom, my brothers, and my son, and we scattered his ashes on the mountain where our ancestors resisted genocide. That was my dad's wish. Musadakis was such a huge part of my dad's life. And even though we never went there together when he was alive, he passed that connection on to me. Ever since my parents' first visit, I had wanted to go, but it felt like such a big experience, and I wanted it to be on my own terms. Years before my dad got sick, in 2015, I took my first trip, solo, to Musadakis. I went to Vakuf, the one village that has remained Armenian, met Jem and his family for the first time, and we instantly bonded. Everything felt familiar, not just from my dad's videos, but on a cellular level. The smell of the orange blossoms and bay leaves, the sea air, the homemade olive oil. It felt like my natural habitat. On my first day there, Jem took me on a tour of all the former Armenian villages. And of course, we went to the house. Just like that, after years of hearing about it, I was on a hilltop overlooking the Mediterranean at my great-grandparents' doorstep. We were greeted by Hamala, the old woman who had famously welcomed my father. Jem said, "Remember the crying man with the video camera?" She cocked her head and threw up her arms as if to say, "How could I forget?" Jem told her, "This is his daughter." So now I was the daughter of the crying man. Hamala greeted me warmly, motioned for her daughter-in-law to bring us something to drink. Then came those familiar words. "Hoş geldiniz, hoş geldiniz." Welcome, welcome. I smiled politely and said thank you. I had watched my dad's videos so many times, but being there, I really saw the house for the first time. The underside of the old roof was lined with neat, dense rows of twigs. Jem told me they were laid by my great-grandfather. Further down, there was an addition, made of flimsy, modern shingles. I went from room to room and noticed that most of the furniture looked old enough to have belonged to my family. I hesitated a bit. It felt like I was imposing. But Hamala waved her hand and nodded her head, as if to say, "Go, look, take pictures." She'd done this before. This was a decade ago, and so much of that day is a blur. But there's one moment I remember so clearly. Standing on the second-floor landing, just like my grandfather must have growing up, I thought, this was his view. This is what my babug woke up to every morning. The green hills dotted with houses, the Mediterranean, then on the border between Turkey and Syria, Mount Cassius. It was epic. And then he lived through years of displacement and struggle. I think about where he ended up, in the flat monotony of suburban Toronto. He would pass his days sitting in the food court of the mall across the street with other old Armenian men. They'd play cards and exchange stories from back home. He went from that view to the Fairview Mall food court. This really hit me standing there, and it made me wish I had known him more, had asked him more questions. As we left, Hamala gave me some homemade bay leaf soap. I told her I liked her headscarf, which had bright red embroidered edges. She beamed, sent her daughter-in-law into the house, and she quickly came back with a scarf for me. It was navy and pink, with little flowers stitched in. Being in the house my great-grandfather built gave me access to something I couldn't name. Not a fact, but a knowing. I got some of that knowing in that moment, and once I got it, I wanted more. It was always in my head, planning my next trip back. But it was tragic news that made it feel urgent for me to return. The earthquake that ravaged southeast Turkey, including Musadakis, in February 2023. I went in June, 4 months after the earthquake, and just a month after my father passed away. When the earthquake hit in February, it was towards the end for him, and he was experiencing some cognitive decline. I was with him when it was all over the news. There was also awful news coming in from Armenia and Artsakh, from Lebanon. And for him, it was all mixed up together as things are bad back home. I was relieved that the scale of the destruction wasn't sinking in for him. It would have crushed him. When I got there in June, it was hard to wrap my own head around. Antakya, the historic metropolis of Antioch, is the nearest city. There, it felt post-apocalyptic. We drove through block after block of cranes clearing rubble. Vakuf, the Armenian village, was in bad shape too. All homes had suffered some damage. Some were completely destroyed. The steeple of the church had collapsed. Jem's mom had been badly injured, along with many others. The population of Vakuf had already been declining, but now even more people had left. This village had survived so much, but this felt like it could be a breaking point. So all of this was with me when we went to Yornoluk, back to my ancestral home. I went with Jem, his wife, and my co-producers. We parked the car on the road and then walked down a footpath to get to the house. It was lined with tents on either side. People still living in these makeshift conditions months after the earthquake. We got to where the house should be. And there, sitting outside a tent, was Hamala. Hoş geldiniz. Welcome. Like she said to my father all those years ago, and then to me. You okay, you're okay. How do you say family?
Aile.
Aile, tamam.
Aile tamam benim. Eşim öldü önce. Ben tek. O çocuklarım var. Aile şimdi tamam burada.
She says her family, her grandkids, they're all okay. They're living, for now, in tents set up on the walkway leading to the house. The house itself has been reduced to mounds of stone, scraps of wallpaper peeking through, some mangled toys. I can still see parts of the old twig roof. Most of Hamala's kids and grandkids used to live under this roof. They're excited to have visitors.
Hello.
What's your name?
My name is Mehmet.
My name is Seda.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
20.
As we look at what remains, I'm trying to sort out which parts are the house my great-grandfather built and which are new additions. I think in Hinna,
Şurası. Şu kerpiçler.
I think in
Burası.
Babugis Shinat,
Bunu işte, bunu diyorum işte.
I think in Hinna Gohar Khachatryan.
Hayır, ciş
It feels like I need to know, but I'm not sure what knowing it would change. It's like on my dad's videotapes. There are several minutes where he's just slowly, silently surveying the perimeter of the house. Then I say to Jem, I want to know if any of the old things have remained. To which he quickly replies,
No.
no, don't ask that. I was a bit taken aback. but I think I understand what he meant. You don't say to someone who is living in a tent next to the pile of stones that used to be her home, "Can I go inside and look around, see what's left?" I see how this could feel disrespectful, so I didn't insist. But it felt important to me to get as close to what was left as possible. I'd only been to the house once while it was still standing, back in 2015. And I didn't feel like I had gotten a proper feel for it. I don't mean examining every piece of furniture. I mean being in that space, just closing my eyes and being there. This was possibly my last chance to be with the house. What I felt in that moment was a sort of panic. I used to have this place, this physical testament to my family's existence on our native land. And now it was gone. But it was still sort of there. Whatever shred of it was left, I felt like I had to cling to it. I brought up the scarf Hamala had given me on my last visit. Cem's wife was translating.
Şimdi hatırladım. Ya eşarp edemedi.
Yeah, it was very pretty.
Alıyor muydu başına onu?
Takıyor musun başına diye? Do you cover?
I don't cover my head, but sometimes I put on my shoulders. I think I was just trying to connect with her over something. It's like Hamala is my link to the house. But our lives are worlds apart. The scarf felt like something we could both place our hands on.
Sağ ol, teşekkürler. İnşallah evlerimiz güzelce yapılır. Yine gelin oturup sohbet ederek, kahve içerik, çay içerik.
As we're leaving, Hamala says, "Next time you come, I'll make you coffee and tea. Next time, I'll give you another scarf." Kalankam.
Bir dahaki sefer diyorum.
İnşallah. Hadi canım, güle güle.
Goodbye.
My relationship with Hamala and her family exists in a delicate realm. I don't really know how to navigate it. I just know to tread gently. Everyone's okay. Goodbye. Ayo. Cem says, "It's good that your dad did not see the house in this condition." I'm glad we got to go. I felt a layered kind of sadness as we drove away. One of those layers came from seeing Hamala and her family living in those conditions. It made all the suffering I'd witnessed over the past few days more real. At the same time, seeing the house destroyed, it felt like something very dear to me had washed away. I'd lost something too. And this was all very shortly after losing my dad. So much of what the house meant to me had to do with what it meant to my dad. I know how rare it is, as an Armenian, to be able to set foot in your ancestral home. I feel lucky that I've gotten to do it, and I'm grateful to my dad for this. Now that the house is gone, it hurts. But that's not where things end. I would have expected some kind of finality associated with the loss. But my connection to Musadakis and to my family there is still very much alive. I've been back several times since then, and I keep finding reasons to go. Back when my grandfather recognized his sister in that video, a connection that had been disrupted for 60 years began to come together again. We are weaving ourselves back into the soil. It's like my dad said to Jem all those years ago. Aryuna gakashe. The blood will pull us. The blood keeps pulling me. Country of Dust is created and produced by Nyree Abrahamian, Jeremy Dalmas, and Gohar Khachatryan. Sound engineering and music by Jeremy Dalmas. Thank you, Gohar and Jeremy, for your patience and care in making this episode. Thank you, Alex Atack and Dana Balut, for your expert feedback and for being so supportive. To my mom, Hasmik, my uncle, Joseph, Jem, Laura, and everyone in my family, from Musadakis to Toronto, who trusted me to tell this story, thank you. This episode was made possible with generous support from the H. Hovnanian Family Foundation, the Hrant Dink Foundation, and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. To the supporters of our crowdfunding campaign, we couldn't have made this season without you. Thank you for backing us. And we're grateful to you for tuning in. To support us, head to countryofdust.com.